welcome to my humble abode. I've been following a lot of upcoming indie games, and this one in particular really intrigued me because of its warm color palette and similarities to one of my favorite movies, Spirited Away. However, after all the hype from the 2021 Wholesome Direct, the developer ran into some controversies in June of 2021, which led them to rework their art and the entire game trailer later that year. They eventually stopped releasing new info after that new trailer came out, which led to many wondering if Yokai Inn is still in development. For those who are unfamiliar, Yokai Inn is a Japanese-inspired life sim taking place during the Taisho era, where you run and manage an inn for spirits while farming, cooking, crafting, customizing, raising animals, and befriending folk both human and otherworldly. Yokai Inn is currently still in development and hand-drawn by Shiba Pixels, with Moonsailor handling sound and the music in the game. There's no release date as of right now, but the developer thinks they may be able to get out an early access release of the game in 2 years, but this is not completely cemented just yet. Even though the developer has not been sharing any new updates on their Twitter page, they have been sharing a lot of updates and features and new changes to the Yokai Inn game on their Discord channel, which I'll cover in this video. So if you've been following Yokai Inn in its earlier days, you might be wondering why there is a change in the art style in the first place. The reason of the change started in June of 2021 when Yokai Inn encountered some controversies in which it was compared to JMW327's game Frontier Story, which also had a similar warm color palette and was also a farming game. There were suggestions from the community to go ahead and just change the main character and color palette of the game because those were the main comparisons being made between JMW327's game Frontier Story and Yokai Inn. However, Shiba Pixels took it to another level and reworked the entire art of the game within a couple of months. I think now it looks a lot more distinct and more beautiful, so I'm really happy with the changes that have been made. I think they did a really great job of nurturing their styles over the year, as well as taking the suggestions of the community into consideration. I personally think that it can be really difficult to own up to your mistakes and become a better person, but I really think that Shiba Pixels took all that into consideration, and I'm so excited to go ahead and support this game. There hasn't been much news on the game since the new trailer was released because Shiba Pixels has been focused on solidifying the base game. They have mainly been focusing on sharing some of their work in progress in their Discord channel. I'll make sure to go ahead and share all those new details in this video, so please make sure to stay tuned. You'll be able to farm, fish, cook, mine, and craft with the addition of unique activities like maintaining the furnace and sweeping floors in order to maintain your inn. I also really love the feature where you can befriend the yokai, aka spirits, that visit your little inn. According to the website, every single one of the patrons has dynamic dialogues, so you'll always have fresh conversations when you go home. There are also a bunch of features coming to Yokai Inn, such as collecting furniture and decorating your room to your taste, as well as collecting cute outfits and hairstyles for your character. You can even expand your inn as you continue to manage it, and once you expand your inn, you'll be able to meet and draw in more yokai guests to your inn. Outside of the inn, there will be fellow innkeepers, inn guests, townsfolk that you can interact with and build friendly relationships with. You can celebrate Japanese holidays as well as prepare for them at your inn. There will be seasonal crops that will be easier to grow and be worth more during certain seasons. You can adopt wild animals you find in the wilderness, and some animals can even be used as mounts. Amongst those features, you can swim and climb in the game, which will diversify the gameplay, and live sim features will be returning, so it may be like in the Sims franchise where your energy depletes over the course of the day and you have to eat to regain that energy. To help you on your journey, you can forage for resources and craft tools. Traveling shopkeepers as well as guests will visit your town with exclusive goods that you can purchase from. According to Shiba Pixels work in progress notes, Yokai Inn is situated in Japan during the Edo or Meiji era, but on the website they mentioned that it is going to be based in the Taisho era, so we're not really sure what kind of era that they're going to settle with. So far I think it's probably going to be the Edo or Meiji era because those are the most recent notes from the Discord channel that Shiba Pixels has updated, but everything is kind of up in the air. All these notes that I'm going to be mentioning will be probably subject to change. Shiba Pixel designed some buildings inspired by the Edo or Meiji era, and they are eventually looking to mix Japanese architecture from the Edo or Meiji era with some other architecture sources for inspiration that would help give the game a fantastical feel. They also want to have a wider variety of building shapes, sizes, and roof colors to help break up some of the monotony that can arise from going to a more realistic style. So here are some of the concept images that Shiba Pixels has created for some of the buildings. So she wants to go for a more fantastical feel that mixes inspiration from the Edo or Meiji era. And so here we have some buildings so far. This could possibly be the inn because there seems to be a lot of smoke coming out of it. But here we have another building, and it seems like we have some kind of like fencing, and it could possibly be where we start farming items and grow our crops, because there's like some fields, I think. And below that we have some more buildings. And here it says overgrown, and here it says like this building here is dilapidated. So we might be going ahead and fixing up the inn and progressing that way. And below that we can see like Shape of Pixels has like thought about like how tall these buildings will be. Like, are they going to be stacked or are they going to be smaller? So here we have a concept drawing of a fishmonger stall. I'm not sure if they're all fishmonger stalls or if just one of them is, but so far this is what the stalls should somewhat look like. And as you can see, it says right here, gameplay, select fish physically from shelves. So I'm guessing that's how we're going to go ahead and interact with these stalls. And below that we have an image of some of the yokai, and I think this might be one of the animals that you can mount. So there will be like animals that you can use to transport yourself, kind of like horses, and this might be one of them. Kind of looks like a turtle. Next we have some more building concept drawings, and actually Shape of Pixels thought that these buildings were a little bit too European style, so this is probably going to change up, and we're probably not going to see this in the actual game, but it looks pretty cool. But I think it definitely is a little bit too European. So in this image you can really see that Shape of Pixels is working out the town layout, and as you can see there are many different layouts that they are playing with that aren't just like rows and rows of buildings, which can be boring to traverse. Here are the building designs so far. It looks very warm, kind of like a Wes Anderson film, which Shape of Pixel has said is one of inspirations. There's like a stall right here, one of the buildings, and I guess kind of a dilapidated building. I'm not sure why there are rocks and stakes on there. That's something we may learn about while we play the game, and some signs, trees, and so far it's looking great. So when Shape of Pixels imagined working in an inn for spirits and yokai, they imagined them coming in all shapes, sizes, and personalities, and they imagined that some probably hadn't had contact with a human for a long time or even ever. This gap in cultures could be something interesting for players to discover and come to understand, and they kind of wanted to explore that possibility, and one of their main inspirations for this experience is Spirited Away, especially when the main character Chihiro deals with a lot of the troublesome guests. So Shape of Pixels wants to display the different cultures the yokai may have, especially when compared to humans. Usually in life sims and farming games we have like marriage candidates, and I am a huge fan of like romance in games, but this like typically culminates in marriage after like a bit of romancing, which leads to like the player's spouse moving in with them. However, Shape of Pixels thinks that some people may really love romancing less than human yokai or spirits, but other people will probably not enjoy that as much. And they were considering making the yokai a little bit more palatable as romance partners to more people by drawing them with more human appearances. In fact, they are inspired by the Toho series, which features a lot of yokai-inspired character designs while mainly like maintaining mostly human features. Unfortunately, the character design choices kind of conflicts with what they want to portray in terms of like emotions and experiences when meeting and like dealing with yokai in Yokai Inn. Though they've mentioned romance and marriage in past updates, they are now reconsidering how it will be implemented. So instead of romancing marriage and then having the marriage candidate move in after marriage, they are thinking that it's more of a best friend system where you can hang out and even room with a yokai that you've grown to become fond of or become besties with. Shape of Pixels like wants to acknowledge the player's personal growth alongside these like yokai characters that they will be introducing into the world and ground them in the game mechanics. So they were thinking of a best friend system similar to how Animal Crossing New Horizons handles like deeper relationships. So item durability is usually used in order to disincentivize you from using the same tool or weapon for long periods of time to make the game a little bit more interesting, so the game doesn't feel stale and repetitive. However, Shape of Pixels doesn't think that destroying items feels good. In fact, they mentioned that when your item breaks, it feels like you're being punished for playing the game correctly, and that's not what they're going for. So instead of having your tool break after a couple of uses, they thought about different ways of having players use many tools over the course of their playthrough. So in Japan, Shinto beliefs share a lot in common with animism, that inanimate objects can have a soul. So they started imagining like what if the tools you could use develop over time, giving the tool a unique identity and abilities. And then they started to think about like how Splatoon 2 handled equipment progression. For those who are a little bit unfamiliar with Splatoon 2, it features like multiple abilities for both your weapons and clothing. Over a period of time, these abilities are unlocked and are usually unlocked at random times, but if players don't like the abilities that they've received on like a set of equipment, they can go ahead and reset the equipment or get a new one. So that inspires Shape of Pixels to think about crafting. So currently the player can craft items at a workbench using materials, but Shape of Pixels also wanted a blacksmith in the game. This kind of overlaps with the crafting functionality, and so they thought about like adding a blacksmith that was able to manipulate the abilities you can have on a tool that you've been using a lot. And I really like this because even though you can go ahead and craft things yourself, I always like having a little character that's kind of like watching over me, even if they're not real. It makes it feel a lot more cozier and like I have a friend watching over me. And they also consider like as a reward for taking care of your tools, the item value increases as well, and could also be an alternative way of earning money and income in the game, and possibly a great gift for your yokai bestie. It seems like they're kind of like playing with the idea of a crafting tree that allows you to make better tools from rare materials that would eventually unlock more potential abilities for that tool. Shape of Pixels wants the nighttime in Yokai Inn to be a little bit spooky for the player, especially since we have yokai featured in the game. But as the player makes friendships, grows in, and obtains special charms, the nighttime becomes a little bit less of a threat as you continue playing it. So they want to have like special NPCs, animals, resources, and quests featured at night that the player can go ahead and try to complete over the course of the game, so that's a little bit more interesting. There are a bunch of yokai in Yokai Inn. Some are good and some are a little bit more malicious, and they've considered how to kind of incorporate these malicious yokai in this life-sim game. And they immediately thought of how like in the Shin Megami Tensei franchise, where you have to like correctly guess a philosophical prompt based on their personalities, or maybe the yokai just ask for money. So in Yokai Inn, if you get confronted by a malicious yokai, you might be asked for an offering by force. So depending on how you respond to the demands, there could be a range of responses from the yokai, such as leaving you alone for the night, to knocking you out and losing items and or money. They were considering having Tsukumogami yokai, which are like inanimate objects turned to life, be the main malicious yokai. And they kind of like noted down like these Tsukumogami yokai are also sometimes referred to as like tool kami, which is really funny if you think about how this game really focuses on your tools and making sure that you care for them in order to create a stronger tool. And they were even considering that there might even be more malicious yokai at night if you neglect caring for your tools. There will be charms that the player can obtain to help deal with these malicious yokai, such as having like a traveling vendor sell you a variety of charms that deal with various specific scenarios, and these charms currently act as a get out of jail free card if you're unable to dodge the yokai that is running after you, but you still want to like keep the precious items that you've accumulated over time. These items will be in limited supply, so these charms won't be everywhere. In fact, the vendor will only appear twice a week, so you'll need to prepare your exploration runs at night if you don't want to be a victim of the malicious yokai. So those are some of the updates I have for Yokai Inn, but if you want to go ahead and check out more videos like this where I cover cozy gaming news, check out this playlist right here. And if you're interested in checking out more videos where I recommend cozy games, check out this playlist right here. Thank you all, bye!